Welcome to Spirit Knox to Brooklyn Mosaic. So today we're talking about mommy wounds. How do you heal mommy wounds? Um, for me, I don't know if my situation would be like a little unique to most people. My mom was like 19 years old when she had me. She was single. My dad went away to Vietnam and she was pretty much waiting for him to come back. She got involved with my stepdad after 2 years of not hearing from my biological father and got involved with him and then was pregnant with my younger brother, right? So, when my dad came back from the war, he was coming to her. And she basically had to tell him, like, I didn't hear from you in 2 years. I didn't get a letter. I asked your family. No one gave me any information. She was like, so, like I've moved on because like I didn't have a choice. So they cried, it's a whole thing. And I remember just like my dad coming to get me for maybe like a year or two. And then he was killed. He died in the war. So I just was like, I'm sorry, he died after he came home from the war. He died in a car accident, which I always thought was so odd. I'm like, how does someone go and fight in Vietnam for 2 years and then end up dead in a car accident? It just didn't make sense to me. But I was told, he was trying to save other people. He was that kind of guy. So I could only hope that his spirit, he is at peace. I know he's on my spirit team. So I leave it at that. But this is really more about, like I said, my relationship with my mom. So now we have this young woman with this daughter, and my mom is kind of quiet. She's still kind of like a young girl herself, right? So she would get me to speak for her. Like if she wanted to ask a price for something or she wanted to tell someone something, she would send me, go over there and ask the price. Go and do this. To the point where if we were standing in line and somebody got like stood in front of us, I would tap them and be like, you don't see my mother standing here? And they would just be like, oh, and they would move. So people would always say like I was grown from an early age, like I was an old soul. And it was really because I guess our relationship was like sisters as well. In some ways it was dysfunctional though. And I had to really come to terms with that when I was doing my shadow work, right? It was dysfunctional because I shouldn't have been taking on a parenting role. I shouldn't have been parentified in that way, like I was parenting her, right? Even with my younger brother, there were things that my mother would get really frustrated with my brother about, like potty training, letting go of his bottle. Like she would just get really frustrated, and I would just step in and take over, So I was parentified in that way. Um, of course, as we got older and she started to date, then it was a thing of she's putting her mates that she's dating ahead of her children. When she's single, we get all the attention in the world. But when she has a boyfriend, it's like, you guys can take care of yourselves. She's disappearing for the weekend. She's kind of doing her own thing. Um, when I thought about it, I was just like, wow, that really wasn't appropriate. That wasn't cool. But this is what happens with single moms who still feel like they haven't lived their lives. They're still young as well. We never, it was never anything where we weren't clean. We had we had a roof over our head. We ate. And I think in a young parent's mind, these are the things they're supposed to do. And they don't really account for what it looks like to really parent someone, because like I told you, my mom's mom died when she was 5. So how much parenting could she really know outside of what she learned from other people who really may not have wanted her around or who only wanted to use her as a babysitter, right? So that's what she had. She did the best with what she knew. And she was my best friend. Like I love my mom to death, but she had her ways. Oftentimes we will put our parents on pedestals and we don't deal with the fact that there were things that weren't cool. So there was some stuff that I was like, well, how did this happen? And, if you've heard my other videos where I talk about, being a baby and, being sexually molested by a church pretty much in some kind of demonic ritual, then the other part goes to how did they get access to me, right? Did you just hand me over to my grandfather for a visit? Did he say he was going to be taking me somewhere, like going to see my grandmother or something, and gave you money? Like, did he trick you? How did that happen? How did it happen when I was like 5? You know, how does it happen that I end up being parentified in this role? So again, we know that our parents do the best with what they know, and we cannot blame our decisions on them, because all they're really responsible to do is to give you a foundation. Who you become after that is your own thing. I can tell you that when I became a mother, I was really big on letting my son talk to me. Like, even if I was disciplining him, he did something I didn't like, I wanted him to explain. And that would frustrate my mom. My mother would be like, stop letting him talk back. You need to beat his behind, da, 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 And I never put my hands on my son. He's never had a spanking. I don't agree with corporal punishment. Um, but she was like, she wasn't one to really beat you, but if she was accusing you of something and you tried to explain, she'll smack you right in your mouth. Don't talk when I'm talking. Don't talk back. And I always felt like my voice was being, like, my throat chakra was being blocked pretty much. Don't express yourself. And I hated that. Like, I'd be standing there with like my lip trembling, wanting to defend myself that I wasn't guilty. There was none of that, because you just make it worse. Then it would be, wait till your stepdad get home. So it was that kind of discipline. And I just didn't agree with it. And I would let my son talk and explain. And sometimes he would hear himself how stupid he sounded, trying to explain why he did something wrong, because he's a very intelligent boy. So after he explained himself, he'd be like, I'm sorry, mommy. You were right. I shouldn't have done it. I'm like, yeah, you need to hear how crazy you sound right now. So that's the relationship I had with him. I also didn't want him thinking that it was okay for a woman to be putting her hands on her child. I don't agree with that. Or to be calling him out of his name, to be verbally abusive. I wasn't perfect. There were times when he felt like I was belittling him. And we talked about that. We've had conversations about that. And I accepted, I was receptive to what he had to say. But I also let him know, like, I'm your mom and I have certain expectations for you. And we leave it at that. We have a great relationship. He talks to me about things he doesn't talk to other people about. He shares very private things with me that he might even be embarrassed to talk to people about. He comes to me with problems about his friends, like, Mom, do you think I advised him correctly? So I love the relationship we have, because it's not strained. It's not a power play. It's a mutually it's reciprocated. It's a respectable bond that we have, and I think that's important. So I hope this was helpful to you all. There's some loud crowd coming down the road in the Gambia with a huge truck, so I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope you found this helpful on, healing and identifying issues that you might have had with your mom. If you need a part 2, let me know. Thank you for coming to Spirit Knot, Silver Mosaic.